In the last few years, we have seen countless horror stories about HOAs in the news, from friends, maybe even, and it's time to sort out some of the facts of the pros and the cons of HOAs, particularly here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had a conversation with a new client, Diana and Robert, earlier today, and it reminded me of this topic because I've had so many people coming from Florida, some folks coming from New York, and a lot of people coming from the Midwest or the West Coast to Charlotte, North Carolina that have questions about HOAs, concerns, horror stories, things they want to avoid. And on the flip side, too, some people that absolutely will not buy a home unless it comes with an HOA. And so there are some myths that need to be dispelled. There are some uncomfortable truths that I'm going to affirm. And by the end of this video, hopefully I can give you a little bit more clarity about what is the right choice for you. And just again, fear only lives in the vague, so we're going to get very specific with some of this information. Now, if you are coming from Florida, like they were, there are some really, I'm trying to think of a PG word for this, some very uptight HOAs and some of the absolute worst news headlines that I've seen anywhere have come specifically from Florida. Everybody wants freedom. And for Diana and Robert, they in particular, they don't want somebody telling them that they can't put up a swing set for their kids. They can't uh, put up a mini barn if they want to have some extra storage in the backyard. They can't paint their front door a fresh coat of navy blue instead of slightly different than navy blue and get fined for it. And so it is true that many of those stories do exist. And even in North Carolina, here, we are one of the states where you got to pay your HOA dues. And you also got to pay fines if you get slapped with fines, or else you could lose your home. You can love that. You can hate it. It is the fact of the matter. And a lot of people don't know that. And a lot of attorneys don't even tell you that when you close, but you deserve to know it. And um, the it's become very popular to just blanket hate on HOAs in recent years. But I'm going to give you, again, the pros and the cons, the full story, let you make the decision, and I'm going to give you the unpopular side of the story. I had a client, Clayton and Julie, that I'm actually going to see right after this and hang out with them here in a few minutes. But they were very intentional on not wanting to have any sort of HOA when we started looking at homes. They really wanted new construction as well. And so that, depending on budget, is really difficult to get around. You know, if you have infinite budget and you can just print money, then obviously that's not an issue. But for us normal people, right, that is a consideration you got to take into account. And so, anyways, within certain price points, HOAs, particularly for new construction, are pretty much unavoidable. And so, as we were looking at homes, we had a discussion about this, and there's a few different things I always look at that I'll get to later in the video uh, in HOAs to make sure that they're um, a match for your lifestyle and your priorities. And so they decided to move forward with this home that's in an HOA, even though they had a lot of concerns about it, and rightfully so. It was maybe a week and a half, maybe 10, 14 days after they moved in, that their neighbor hosted this big family function and had a ton of people over. Luckily, it wasn't too noisy, but the next day, and mind you, this is during the summer when it's hot out, you got that hot Carolina sun, a little bit of steamy humidity, and there's 30 bags of garbage, trash, with food in it, just heaped on the side of their neighbor's home from this party. And it's not spilling over into their property, but what is there's flies everywhere. There's the stench of something that was in these bags just rotting in the sun. And there's bees flying around or hornets or something, and it's just nasty, right? And so they were able to just submit to the HOA, hey, like this is not okay. And the HOA reached out to their neighbor, told them, you can't really do that. You need to uh, actually toss the garbage either in the can or take it somewhere, but you can't just leave it sitting out on your front lawn and the side of your house, because that's not fair to the people that live around you. And it was no drama. It was taken care of very quickly. And in some neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that have no HOA, it wouldn't necessarily have been taken care of. This is one of those things that you, again, when you're looking at the pros and the cons, this is one of the pros of the HOA. It's not a popular thing to say, but it's an important thing to say. Uh, as I'm going through my notes here, what was the next thing I wanted to add? Oh, yeah. So, so if you want to be able to paint your home or add a swing set or those sort of things, there's a process for being able to do it, and you can do it. And I'll walk through how that typically looks here in just a second. When I was talking with my clients earlier today, she mentioned that her dad was recently looking for a home. I think she said in northern North Carolina. She found this beautiful home, beautiful lot, beautiful setting, great property, and it had just one problem. It was right next to a house that looked like it was running a junk car lot or chop shop or something in the front yard. Like there's half disassembled cars everywhere with pieces and parts all over, just an eyesore with the chain link fence and all sorts of stuff. And in a non HOA area, guess what? If you buy in a nice area and then somebody buys next to you and decides that they want to start running a DIY chop shop out of their front yard, if you don't have an HOA or any rules and regulations that are preventing them from being able to do that, there's no way for you to prevent that. And if it negatively impacts your property values, that is a you problem. And so, um, again, that's one of those unpopular things to bring up about the downsides of HOAs is there are some restrictions on what you can do. You can't paint the house pink. Usually, if you get it approved, you can. You can't paint, your front door pink or your sidewalks hot Barbie pink, but or any sort of crazy colors. But you also don't have to worry about your neighbor doing that sort of stuff either. For um, oh yeah, so and this, I mean, this takes me into what I was mentioning earlier about how does this really work? At least here in Charlotte, the majority of HOAs they're not asking for your left arm or your firstborn child or anything crazy like that. The majority of them are asking for basic decency, for common sense, which admittedly hasn't been as common in recent years. Things like not disassembling a transmission in the driveway or parking a boat that's going to block your neighbor's driveway down the street. And so, if you want to be able to do things like set up a swing set for your kids, you can do that. If you want to be able to uh, put up a mini barn or repaint your home, you can do all that. There's either very clear regulations that you get a copy of before you commit to anything that list out what those restrictions are, or in the instance of like changing your home color, there's just a architectural review board that will look at that and make sure that it's not going to be anything that's going to be an eyesore. Now, that covers how they work, but probably, I mean, one of the biggest concerns is the finances. In fact, none of this other stuff matters if somebody just hikes overnight your HOA dues and you're spending $1,000, $2,000. I hear some of these crazy stories from HOAs up in New York where people are spending $2,000 a month just on the HOA. And the reality here in North Carolina is um, that people are putting off fireworks. It is the first of the year. Now, the reality of HOAs here in the Carolinas is that they can't just raise fees whenever they want, at least with for any sort of new spending. The people that are in the community vote on what they're going to spend money on. And so if you live in the community, you're paying the dues, right? But you're also able to have a voice in how the money is spent. So join the board. And this is one of the hacks that every licensed realtor I know does first thing out the gate when they purchase a new home in an HOA community, because if you're on the board, you are the policy for how everything's going to be run. Now, one of the things that I haven't heard anybody talk about on the financial side of HOAs is, particularly if you're at an entry level, like first time buyer price point, for the most part, that's anywhere from mid 200s, so maybe about $250,000 up to, we'll call it about $550,000, $600,000, depending on the area around Charlotte. There's one thing that's very, very important right now when it comes to cost, everybody forgets about, and that is interest rate. But what does an interest rate have to do with HOAs, Lucas? Well, let me tell you. If you're looking at new construction, there are builders, generally larger builders, that will have rate incentives. And for all the big builders, in order to mitigate some of the risk of being able to sell through larger communities, because people do crazy things and then it becomes an issue and makes it hard to sell more homes, what do they do to mitigate their risk and also to incentivize people that want a long-term investment? They put in an HOA because it gives that risk management for property value maintenance, so to speak. And so, if you want to take advantage of some of these interest rates that can increase your purchase budget by as much as 20%, like that's a big increase. Like when I was running the numbers with them, they really want to stay around a $1,500 per month payment, including property taxes, insurance, all that sort of stuff, HOA fees. And so to get down to that $1,500 a month range with $50,000 down, if you are going with a traditional mortgage, like full market rate mortgage, you're looking at maybe about a $250,000, $260,000 purchase budget, maybe 260. Really, it's 250. If you're looking at something that would have a builder's rate incentive of like a 3.99 or something, then all of a sudden we're able to look at 300,000 or even a little bit more than that, depending on, again, what some of those incentives are. And so you can get a lot more home, or you can save a lot of money because they'd be probably more like $1,100 a month if they were looking down in the 250 range, which granted, harder to find new construction at the 250 range than the $300,000 range, but not impossible. And for the amount of money you're saving each month or the amount of extra space that you have each month, sure, there's a little bit less quote unquote freedom outside your home, but inside your home and inside your pocketbook, most importantly, you have so much more freedom by having an extra $500, extra $1,000, extra, at higher price points, $1,500 a month that isn't just going to paying the bank more interest. What else did I want to cover? I guess I'll recap, or I'll summarize this section by saying, if you consider yourself to be a very reasonable person and not somebody that's trying to cause a lot of problem, you just want to make sure nobody else is going to cause problems for you, then make sure you don't get into a bad HOA. And we have some strategies for that I'll share at the end. But it's not something to be scared of. It's just something to research and, again, crunch the numbers, look at options, keep an open mind. And if you find something that matches all your criteria with or without an HOA, the neighbors around you, the atmosphere of the neighborhood whether or not you have crazy people that are going to do crazy things or enforce crazy things upon you. Either way, you want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to cause any trouble. Um, the the fourth and last section. Oh yeah, how does it all work? So, how do HOAs exactly work, especially if you want to make changes? So, if you want to put in a fence, you want to build an additional structure, usually anything that's going to be permanent and you can't just pick up and move. So, usually if you're, just dropping a shed in place or just dropping a playground in place, you don't necessarily have to do anything to get that approved. But if you are wanting to put in a permanent fence, you want to put in a permanent additional structure, you want to put in a permanent pool. Well, guess what? Usually, with the exception of the fence, you're going to have to get approval from the city and permits for that regardless, right? One extra step in that process is just also getting approval from the HOA. And what the HOA is typically looking for is, again, does it match the home? You're not putting a hot pink Barbie house behind your house or in front of your house. Out of line of sight of the front of the home, usually. Again, this all depends on the individual property and guidelines for each individual, but in general. And that if it is the type of structure that is going to look like the home, that it will also just match. So again, you're going to have the same color or a complementary color, so it won't clash. And as long as you're cool with that, it shouldn't be an issue. You usually just have a form that you fill out, and depending on the HOA and how on top of things they are, it might be a week, it might be a month. It could, in some instances, when they're busy, even be a couple of months, but you just get the approval and it's one extra step. So, again, it's not a fit for everybody, but it is something that is many times worth considering because of the additional options that it offers to you. And so, what I like to do is just give you some options and some perspective to help you make the best decision for you possible. And so, whether you at this point are thinking HOAs sound like the perfect fit or like it is 100% confirmed you want to avoid them, then you can scan a code somewhere around this video and get my list of HOA homes or non HOA homes. And also, my last bonus tip, I'll give you one last bonus tip. Any home you buy comes with neighbors. If you want to know whether or not the neighbors are crazy or the HOA is crazy, what we always do with clients is just knock on a few doors and ask them what they think of the community and ask them what they think of the HOA. And when there have been bad HOAs, there's one that actually ended up in the news a couple of months ago. I knew about it about a month before it hit the news and told a client to pass on it because of stories we heard about the HOA from one of the neighbors of a home that we were looking at. So again, not something to be scared of, just something to be mindful of. My name's Lucas Roller, your expert realtor here in the beautiful Queen City. And as always, until next time, hope to show you around town.